Hello and welcome to the second episode of Sports Matters. I'm your host, Matt Bruegge. So today we're going to continue talking about the NBA playoffs, and two NBA awards have already been given out, and one NBA coach got fired after just missing the playoffs. So Kawhi Leonard and Lou Williams have already been handed out awards this year, with Leonard winning the Defensive Player of the Year award and Lou Williams winning the NBA Sixth Man of the Year award. The Defensive Player of the Year award was sort of controversial considering Kawhi Leonard didn't have as many first place votes as Draymond Green, and he still ended up winning the award, which some didn't think was right, as Green has been instrumental in helping the Warriors have the best record in the NBA this season and has been a force on defense. And Lou Williams winning the Sixth Man of the Award was a right choice, I think, because he has helped the Toronto Raptors get to the fourth seed in the playoffs, where they did get swept, but he did have a great year, and there really wasn't anybody else that was a major factor coming off of the bench this year. I heard Andre Iguodala was mentioned as a possible winner of the award, but ultimately I think Lou Williams was very deserving of the award because he had a near career year and showed a resurgence in his career. So now let's talk about the Oklahoma City Thunder, who recently just fired Scott Brooks. Yeah, he's took them to the playoffs every single year besides this year, and including a NBA Finals appearance, and they decided to fire him. They missed the playoffs this year by just a game, and they were without Kevin Durant for the majority of the year, who, as we already know, was the MVP last year and is arguably one of the best players, if not the best player in the NBA when he's healthy. And he's going to become a free agent soon, and he discussed previously that one of the major factors of why he would stay was the head coach, Scott Brooks. And so now this is just going to continue to amp up discussions if he will return home and play for his hometown Washington Wizards, which is a very strong possibility now that they fired Scott Brooks. I don't really see the logic behind the firing. I mean, who are you going to bring in that's going to do what he did right off the bat? Billy Donovan from Florida has been mentioned as a front runner for the job, and Kevin Ollie withdrew his name after he said he's going to remain at UConn. So I don't really think those coaches, either of them, would have done as good of a job as Scott Brooks did. Kevin Ollie missed the NCAA tournament this year, so how, even though he's took his name out of consideration for the job, how would you have him come in and take them to the playoffs or farther than Brooks ever took them? He was a great coach, and quite frankly, I think this was just a dumb firing, and there's really not a logic behind it. So let's talk about the NBA series that have already concluded in the first round. The Golden State Warriors swept the New Orleans Pelicans. The Houston Rockets won 4-1 over the Dallas Mavericks. And out east, the Washington Wizards swept the Toronto Raptors, and the Boston Celtics got swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So out west, Memphis is up 3-1 on the Portland Trailblazers. And so it looks like they're probably going to move on and play the Golden State Warriors, which they'll probably just get annihilated again because Golden State's just too good, and Mike Conley just had that face surgery after getting injured in the playoffs, so they don't really have anybody that can match up with Thompson and Curry or Draymond Green. The Grizzlies will have a good inside presence with Zach Randolph and Marcus Gasol, but the Warriors just have too much firepower for the Grizzlies to even make it really worth a good series. And down to the bottom of the Western Conference, the Houston Rockets will either face the San Antonio Spurs or the Los Angeles Clippers, who right now sit one game back of the San Antonio Spurs in the series, down 3-2. Whatever team plays the Rockets will give them a really tough time and probably push it to 7 games, as it looks like the Spurs and Clippers might go to 7 games in their first round series. If the Clippers play the Rockets, I ultimately see the Rockets moving on because even though DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin will guard Dwight Howard greatly, I just think James Harden is too much for most people to guard and keep him down in points and stuff. So I think he'll go off in that series. But if the Spurs play the Rockets, I think that one could be close, and I could see the Spurs having more of a chance to move on than the Clippers just because they have more experience and they move the ball so well and play great team defense. But ultimately, coming out of the West, it's hard to pick anybody but the Golden State Warriors. They just have too much firepower and too many good players, and I don't think any defensive player, let alone the defensive player of the year, Kawhi Leonard, could end up stopping the Golden State Warriors, where if they met, that would be the conference finals. So ultimately, I still see the Warriors moving on to the NBA Finals. And out in the East, the Wizards will either play the Atlanta Hawks or the Brooklyn Nets, who are surprisingly tied at 2 games apiece. I thought the Hawks would have a really easy time with the Brooklyn Nets because, quite frankly, the Nets aren't very good, and I thought they would get a sweep or maybe let the Nets win just 1 game but still handle the series pretty well. So if the Nets do end up moving on, which I don't think is a likely possibility, I think Washington would have no problem with them. But if the Hawks move on, which they should, and I think they will, then I think that will be a tough series for the Hawks considering they're having a tough time with the Brooklyn Nets. But ultimately, I see them coming together as a team as they have this whole year and defeating the Washington Wizards to get to the conference finals. And down to the bottom of the Eastern Conference bracket, the Milwaukee Bucks have won the past 2 games and now sit just 1 game back in a 3-2 series with the Chicago Bulls, who will face the Cleveland Cavaliers if they win the series, which I think the Bulls will pull it out in their next game and win the series and face the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Cleveland kind of has sort of an easy road to the finals, in my opinion. Chicago will be their biggest roadblock on the way, and I think they can displace them in 5 or 6 games unless Derrick Rose goes off and plays like he did in his MVP season, which he has showed flashes of in the playoffs, but not quite consistently enough yet. And the Bulls don't have anybody to match up against LeBron James. He's just too big and powerful. They don't have anybody tall enough, strong enough, or quick enough to play against him. And so in the Eastern Conference Finals, you'd have the Hawks and the Cavs would move on easily from that because, as I said, their toughest second-round series would be with the Chicago Bulls. And ultimately, I still see the Warriors winning the NBA title, as I said in the first episode of the show. But you never know. Things could shake up, and there could be upsets in the playoffs. But I think it's kind of a set NBA Finals as far as these teams have been great all year. The Cavs struggled at the beginning of the year, of course, but after the All-Star break, they've been great, and not too many teams have been able to stop them. So I think it'll be a great NBA Finals, and we'll have a lot of people watching it. So that about wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you for listening. Again, I'm your host, Matt Bruegge, and you have listened to Sports Matters.